Hey, folks, it's Ben Wheeler, newly nominated Hugo something. I don't know. It's pretty tertiary. And unfortunately, the Hugos have reared their quite, I don't know how to say it, ugly is a simple understatement. You don't simply want to use ugly when you can use hideous and Medusa like head to come up there. And the reason why I say that I'm now a newly Hugo nominated author is because their nominations have gotten quite broad. You see, the Hugos have been going downhill. I don't really care or know what sort of numbers is going on with their attendance and all that jazz. But since they have pretty much refused to allow the leading Hispanic voice in science fiction, John De La Raz, into their ranks, I can only assume this racist organization has no good deeds among it. And as such, they have been scraping the bottom of the barrel. And that bottom of the barrel is a website called Archive of Our Own, um, which is basically a glorified fan fiction website. It pretends it has class in ways that MLPfanfic.com or whatever it's called uh, does not. Though, of course, those bronies only care about brony issues. I'd say it's about equivalent. There is brony stuff on Archive of Our Own. So, in other words, it's all connected into one giant, uninspired fan fiction circle thing. I don't know. Ouroboros eating its own tail, blah, blah. So, in other words, because yours truly has stories on Archive of Our Own, I believe firmly from the bottom of my heart that that counts as a Hugo nomination. I don't expect to win. It's a hard road. But I only hope that people vote with their hearts. And for the website that has the most homestuck most homestuck slash fan fiction, this side of the Rishi maze. Just looking through this, it's absolutely horrible. Most of these are unwatchable or unreadable. Um, and almost all of them are essentially purity spirals into mediocrity and unpleasant literature that I would not even burn to warm myself in the Antarctic winter, for fear that the ink flowing up into my nostrils will cause me all sorts of distress and lower my IQ. There's like lowering your IQ with drugs, and then there's lowering your IQ with the Hugo Awards, and all their terrible, terrible things. For best novel, I'm going to go over their things real quick, just because they deserve it. Best novel, it's Five Unknowns and Naomi Novik, who is Vox described her as a C tier authoress, but honestly, I think she's a bit better than that. She has had some books come around. Maybe currently she's kind of C tier because I haven't heard of anything after Her Majesty's Dragons ended up, which was the only thing I've read of her that I've even vaguely finished. Good evening, Wally Ram. I'm gonna type some stuff in there for you. Good to acknowledge people who's listening to me. So the first one is by the way, Tor is disproportionately represented in everything except for best novel. So the first one is The Calculating Stars by Mary Robinette Kowal, a person I've heard around in this group. She shows up. Does she show up again? No, I'm thinking of P. Jelly Clark. I think that's how you pronounce his middle name. But yeah, she's the Tor author. I'll take a look at The Calculating Stars just because I'm interested. Brilliant mathematician, female lead. What is this? Looming threat, climate change, meteorite. She's a fighter pilot and a mathematician. Ooh. So many skilled and experienced women pilots and scientists. It's before long. Why doesn't she go to space? She wants to be the first lady astronaut. Okay. Well, I'm pretty sure she's just riffing off of that movie that had those black lady mathematicians for NASA, as well as Miss Marvel, or whatever her name is. Is Hayden still using the Hugos as his personal fief? Now, to be fair to the troll, he is not. I'm going to double check, but I did not see his name on the list. That's right. He is somehow absent. I don't know what happened to him, whether they decided that he's a little bit too white to be on this list, white and male, but he is not here. I am impressed by his, unless he like changed his name to Neil Clark or something, I guess. What's more, I want to say like 75% of the names on here are women. And it's like, Now, the second novel is Record of a Spaceborne Few by Becky Chambers of Hodder and Stoughton, Harper Voyager. And let's take a look at this. I'm using the Goodreads thing. Humans left Earth. Exodus flees a relic. A few outsiders have seen them. Tessa chose to stay home. Her brother left. Something questioned. Change. Disaster. There's actually very little description of the plot here, just characters. And it's like the third book in a series. So I don't think that excuses such a poorly written synopsis. From the ground we stand, from our ship we live, by the stars we hope. That's... I don't know. Like, the thing is, like, if you've got a description or a book like this, like I don't care who the characters are. I need to know what's happening. They're sitting around alien stuff. Okay. But there's a disaster. What's a disaster? Oh, you'd have to read the book. I'll pass. Thank you for the offer. It was a very kind offer. Let me tell you. All right, let's go to the next one. Then we've got Revenant Gun by Yoon Ha Lee, who is the only male on this list, assuming, of course, he isn't something very special. Very special. And again, this is a number 3. Something most exciting science fiction trilogy of the decade. Okay. I don't know. Is it normal to award the last book in the series? I have no idea. I certainly hope not, because I've seen too many. Like, it's more... I've seen more authors trip up over their ending than I've seen them trip up over their beginning. A book that trips up over its beginning isn't going to be published. It's more likely that a book is going to flub the ending. So, and it's got a male main character. That's going to be a rarity. They're doing this young man's war thing, except he's in a old body instead of a younger body. And there's a whole bunch of fighting, video games. He committed a massacre. Yeah, it's very unimpressive to me right now. The next one is Space Opera by Catherine M. Valente, a name I've heard but never read, unlike Naomi Novik. And it's the space first book, Sentient Wars. There's a gladiatorial camp, contest, beauty pageant, concert extravaganza, continuation of the wars. That's basically a giant dance party that they have to do. And it's basically a ripoff of that one Rick and Morty show, where it's massive amounts. Weird. Why would you want a massive amounts of characters as a plus? I don't know. The Rick and Morty episode where the giant space heads come down from the sky and it's like, show me what you got. And they're like, we don't got much. Okay. That just sounds what it looks like. And I'll call it out as it is. Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. Female. Father isn't a great one. Poverty. Basically, she's a tax collector. What is wrong with this thing? It's a book about tax collecting. Anyway, if I could go back in time and remove Rick and Morty from existence by any means expedient, someone else would do it. You know what I mean? Like Rick and Morty is kind of inevitable. Tommy's going to write about what they know. Yeah. All right. So this is Rebecca, Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse. Climate change. Indian woman. I hope that Rebecca Roanhorse, yeah, she looks Native American. Not pulling an Elizabeth Warren. Monster Hunter. Missing girl. Something larger, greater, more terrible than you possibly imagine. I'm pretty sure this is going to turn out to be a skinwalker. And we've seen that. It's shown up everywhere. Shown up in Jim Butcher had a couple, and something similar I think happened in. Did it happen in Monster Hunter? I can't remember. Yeah, and it is the first book in a series. She gets a medicine man. Honestly, this could be good-ish, but I doubt they have Larry Correa's wit or Jim Butcher's fight sense. Not that Larry Correa doesn't have outstanding fight sense, but he's actually quite funny. They're both quite funny guys, actually. So out of them, there's only one written by a male, and that's Revenant Gun. That honestly sounds one of the worst of these. Actually, no. You know what? I'm going to rephrase that. The worst of them sounds like the Calculating Stars. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's by order of operation. Though I think Spinning Silver and Trail of Lightning actually sounds interesting. However, I don't think they'll get too far. Naomi Novik basically wrote a period piece romance and then added dragons, and it got popular with teen girls. Back when I was in high school, just past high school, I don't know, college certainly. So that's the best novel categories. I'm not even going to go over. There we go. I'm not even going to go over the rest of them. The only name of interest, because they show up quite a few times, is P. Jelly Clark. It's DGE with a thing over it, LI with a thing over it. And he has Black God's drums and a few other things. And he's basically an Afrofuturist, which I have yet to find anything vaguely interesting in that whole genre, other than it's essentially fiction for Black people that they write explicitly for Black people. And I don't mean just Africans, I mean just anyone. Of that melanin thing, and if you're white or Jewish and hate your own people or something, I don't know. Everything else, by the way, is Tor. So 5 out of 6 are Tor Publishing. For best novella, for best novelette, which honestly shouldn't exist. It's just a long short story. 3 are Tor. Then there's a Barnes and Noble novelette, which I have no idea. Sorry about this. Hold on. I mean, having Barnes and Noble authors write fiction won't save them at all. It's just simply one of those things where it's like, by the way, feel free to chat with me in the comments. I'll answer your things. And the best series they have is the Laundry books by Strauss. They are okay. Yeah, I don't know. I've never heard anything good about Barnes and Noble's books. I assume that they're going to go the way of the dodo bird very soon. Let's see here. Then we have Thing About Ghost Stories for Uncanny Magazine, and we were starless by Clark's World. Now, I'll be fair. those could be good. I have reviewed both those things when I worked for what's the name of it? I basically reviewed them for an official website, Tangent Online. There we go. And you know what? Those two did have some decent stories on occasion. I'll give them that. The rest of them, yeah. You know, 3 of them are Tor. One's Barnes and Noble. I don't. That's not exactly a pedigree these days. Well, it's an inbred pedigree. So best short story. Now this is interesting because they actually don't have any Tors in here. They have Lightspeed, Uncanny Valley, 2 from Fireside, which I don't reckon. Fireside Magazine. Actually, who puts out Fireside Magazine? Which I don't recognize. But apparently the right people are reading it. Which... About Us. Kickstarter Sun. Oh, here we go. Since November 8th, 2016, we added a 3rd goal. The first 2 being finding and publishing great stories regardless of genre and paying our writers. Resisting the global rise of fascism and far-right populism, starting with the current occupant of the White House. Oh, boy. They have some... Let's see here. I don't recognize any of the other ones. Yeah. And they have notes for things, which is always like a bad sign. Like when you got a company, when you got a company that's like, oh, we'll warn you with this, it's like either it's not safe for work or it's safe for work. Is it not safe for work? Well, no, but there's domestic violence, sexual abuse, LGBTQ, ABQ violence, and bias violence, and gender bias violence. And it's like, too tired for this. I have to go to bed at 8. It's horrible. Though the tale of the 3 beautiful raptor sisters and the prince who was made of meat sounds great. It actually sounds, it sounds, that's surely going to be the winner. Oh, yeah. Then we have P. Jelly Clark again. The Secret Lives of the 9 Negro Teeth of George Washington from Fireside Magazine. It's like, fantastic. Best series, Tor comes up again. The Sentinel Cycle by Malka Older, Tor. And then The Laundry Files by Charles Stross, again, Tor. I'm told the Laundry Files are readable, and it has a Lovecraft theme to it that might be tasty. But honestly, there are things I need to read that are probably more important than anything touched by Tor. And yes, you know, it's legitimate to do it by that standard, especially since they treated John C. Wright poorly and don't publish good books. They only publish what's popular to their loudmouth Twitter audience. How is a book not safe for work? Is it a talking book? Does it shout racial slurs at minorities? It might. I don't know. A lot of those guys, it's like, you know, when you see a swastika messily driven, you know, drawn on a university wall, it's like, who could be behind this? Oh, it's Tyrone and Shmuley. They wanted to fight fascism by encouraging it. Then they have the Yoon Ha Lee series, Machineries of the Empire, that I talked about in Best Novel. And honestly, I always felt that like you should only really be up for like one award if it's for a book series or something. Just because it's like John Del Rose has pumped out like 2 or 3 books a year, and sometimes they're in the same universe. I really don't think he needs 2 or 3 Hugos for it. I would rather reward him depending on whether it's a good series or a good novel, just as an example. Then we have the Universe of Zuya and Wayfarers. Yep. I've never heard of any of these. It's not like I'm like deep into whatever's popular, but it's like I should at least hear about some of these things. I've heard of Charles Strauss. I've heard of Naomi Novik. I haven't heard of anyone else. So best related work, Archive Our Own. That's the one I want to win. Ben wants his Hugo Award. He's got 2 fictions. One's incomplete on that site. So he deserves a Hugo. That's exactly how it is. If they're going to put up a fan fiction website as a Hugo Award, all fanfic authors should be allowed to win a Hugo nomination and describe themselves as a Hugo winning award-winning artist. I mean, if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. I've written several science fiction and fantasy things on there. One's called Gods of Japan. Another one is a sequel to Jasper Silver that I was just toying around with some ideas. And another one is it's a Rick and Morty fan fiction, really, but that's only the dressing. Like, I introduce him for 5 seconds and get rid of him so I could do what I really want to do, which is about a bassist in a universal contest who has like pieces of the True Cross in his guitar. Yeah. So Woolly Ram says, from Goodreads about Wayfarers. I heard this book was about gays in space. I'm gay and I think space is cool. Seems like a no-brainer. I'm glad he's enjoying it. Though Woolly wasn't the one who was saying that. That's probably a review. Then we've got Astounding. John W. Campbell, Isaac Asimov, Robert A. Heinlein, L. Ron Hubbard, and The Golden Age of Science Fiction by Alec Novella Lee. I actually have heard good things about this article or article series. And basically them talking about what Campbell did and other things like that. Of course, they have their bent to it, but honestly, it's not the worst thing in the world. Then we have a bunch of them that I just don't care about. There's a YouTube thing about the Hobbit duology, and they turned it into 3 parts because that's what the Hobbit did. I'm sure that's clever. That's so clever. Then we've got an informal history of the Hugos, personal look back at the Hugo Awards, 1953 to 2000 by somebody I've never heard before. And that's by Tor because they got to promote their own stuff. Then we got Mexican Initiative website. It's literally the website. And then the Mexican X, because they're not doing Latinx anymore. Can't have those filthy Guatemalans being mixed up with the Mexicans, can we? The Mexican X Initiative experience at Worldcon 76. And I do recognize 1 or 2 of these names, and they're connected to Fireside Magazine. Pablo Defendini, which sounds more Italian than anything else, but whatever. I'm not going to judge a man with a name like that. I would never judge anybody for any reason whatsoever. Yeah, I don't. Then we have Ursula K. Le Guin, Conversations on Writing by Ursula K. Le Guin and David Naiman. Of course, I've heard of Ursula K. Le Guin, but honestly, I don't care. Her writing is so-so to me. I think that the first 2 books of the Earthsea trilogy are worth a damn, but then the rest of it kind of isn't. 3 was just okay. 4 was bad. It didn't complete anything, and it just kind of was like him moping around for hours, and it's like, I don't care. I assume these are letters or something. I'm going to look this one up because it's vaguely interesting to me. Let's see what Amazon says. And 42 new from 100, no, from $10.07. Oh boy. Discusses their fiction, process, something greatest writers of the last century. They call her a science fiction writer. Yes. And it's basically a bunch of interviews. Craft, aesthetics, and philosophy. Honestly, I'm not impressed by any of it. I was more impressed by the world she made rather than her writing style. Her aesthetics were merely okay. I don't actually remember any aesthetic in the Earthsea Quartet. Things were kind of different, changed from place to place. and most of it was very run down, which was the weirdest thing. Like when you're looking at stuff, you can tell like what things look at. If it's an urban fantasy, you still need to describe what Chicago or St. Louis or Houston or New York or San Francisco or whatever looks like. You have to have a vague idea of how things are and how things are developing. If it's 5 minutes in the past, you got to figure out what it looked like 5 minutes in the past. If it's 5 minutes in the future, you got to see where things are going. And hey, San Francisco turning into a giant homeless population tent camp, you can get away with it. So it's a bunch of interviews. Then you got the genre awards, the patriarchy, natural world, and what makes great writing. I'm not really a fan of Ursula K. Le Guin, so I will not be continuing further with this one. So then we have best graphic story. Honestly, I want Archive of Our Own to win it, just so I can say I'm a Hugo winner. Then we've got Abbott, which I've never heard of before. Black Panther Rising, Long Live the King, written by Nnedi Okorafor and Aaron Covington. Then Monstress, which opened Volume 3, which is up for an award with some sort of weird, trippy set of scenes that had no rhyme or reason. On a Sunbeam, Paper Girls, and Saga, Volume 9. And I think Saga has been on every single Hugo I've ever seen when it's been released. Some docking points from Abbott because it focuses more on the mystical aspect of story instead of racism and sexism. You're woke, but you're not woke enough, kid. Minus a point. Nothing personal. I don't really do comics. I don't enjoy them as much as other people seem to. I'm a big fan of web comics, but honestly, most of them haven't been worth it for a very long time. Do something real quick. See if he's on. So I'm just gonna close. There we go. I'm just gonna skip on right through. Because it sounds like that. Like it's like they're trying so hard and they've come so far, but in the end, it doesn't even matter. Now, best dramatic presentation, long form. I don't know why they just can't call it a movie or something like that. But the first one is Annihilation, which I actually enjoyed quite a bit and think it deserves. What's your favorite webcomic, Woolly Ram? Why does it hurt you? Then we have Avengers Infinity War, Black Panther, which is almost certainly going to win because reasons, A Quiet Place, which is decent, Sorry to Bother You, which is not science fiction. It's a dystopian sort of thing, but it's not science fiction at all. QC and Sinfest. That's not a big loss to the world, man. I'm sorry. I remember Sinfest from back in the day. It's not a back when webcomics were really big. I'm so sorry. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which I'm told is good. I have not seen. And Paramount. Yeah, they were fun. A lot of them were fun. A lot of them just kind of got boring. I'm surprised the Meek's still going. That didn't even have a story back in the day. It was just weird jumble of mess. Honestly, it's basically Paramount, Disney, and and then Disney again because they're trying to buy Sony. They want that Spider-Man. They want that Spider-Man money. Ooh. Best dramatic presentation, short form. The Expanse, Doctor Who, Dirty Computer, Good Place, Two Good Places, and then Doctor Who again. So we've got two Doctor Who, two The Good Places, which is a philosophy thing. It's whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to move on. Best editor short form, a bunch of people I don't know. Neil Clark, Gardner Dozoy, Lee Harris. Actually, I think I've heard his name before. Julia Rios, Lynn M. Thompson, and Michael Damian Thomas. I'm sure they've shown up before. Just feel like it. Then E. Catherine Tobler, who I've never heard of before. Then for long form, we've got Sheila E. Gilbert and Leslie Grohl, Beth Malcolm, Deanna Foe, Jillian Redfern, and Neva Wolf. Now, is Neva Wolf female or not? That is a question. Yep, female. All right, so that means that all the long form editors are female, and most of the editors for short form are female or part of a female male team. Best professional artists, a bunch of people I don't recognize, except for Charles Vess. I've heard his name before. Don't know anything about him. Now we've got, let's see here, Someone Who's Been Converged should fit just fine with Disney. You are right. Anyone else can talk, by the way. I don't mind. Then we got Beneath Ceaseless Skies, Fireside Magazine, which is probably going to win. FIA, Magazine of Black Speculative Fiction. Shimmer, Strange Horizons, Uncanny Magazine. Honestly, Beneath Cecil Skies, Strange Horizons, and Uncanny Magazine are things of quality. But specifically for Uncanny Magazine, the only thing they got it on is Disabled People Destroy Science Fiction special issue. In other words, they're virtue signaling to put that on there because they don't really have any other good ones. I'm going to say that Beneath Ceaseless Skies or Strange Horizons probably deserve it, but Fireside Magazine or FIA is probably going to get it. Best fanzine, nobody cares. Best fan cast, nobody cares. But except for only one of them is presented by a male. All the rest of them are female or female-male characters. Best fan writer, nobody cares. But there's a Paceur in there, and heaven forbid that guy win it. Those guys, those Pacers. Best fan artist, a bunch of people nobody cares about. Yep. Best art book. There's another Earthsea thing because Ursula K. Le Guin is the only person they could really approve of these days who anything worth a damn, and is illustrated by Charles Vess, which means that Charles Vess will probably win it, but who knows. Then there's a few other ones, a Dungeons and Dragons thing, which probably has a decent chance, and then a Tolkien and a Spider-Verse thing, which are kind of dark horses. And then there's a generic fantasy art thing and a Daydreamer or something about artist something. I just can't be bothered to care. Then we have the two other awards. Lodestar Award for Best Young Adult Book, which we have. I've heard of Dread Nation. I think I've heard. Nope, that's not it. Yeah, I haven't heard of any of these. Dread Nation, kind of. Let's take a look at that one. Dread Nation 01. And it's zombies on the Civil War. Yep, okay. And it's Black Girl and other things like that. Dungeon Punk Aesthetic emerged from D&D 3rd edition. Yeah, that wasn't bad. I'm not really a D&D guy. I don't really play it that often. So, I gotta check for Art of Quang. All right. Okay. So then we get to the John W. Campbell. Oh joy, more zombies. That's right. John W. Campbell Award for Best New Writer. And 5 of the 6 names on there are published last year. I mean, sorry, not published last year. They're published in 2017. That's when they came out. All right, I got published in 2018. Nobody cares. I don't care. I care a lot. So we've got Catherine Arden, S.A. Chakraborty, R.F. Quang, and then Jeanette Ng, Veena J. Min Prasad, and River Solomon. Yeah, that's right. I remember now. All of them are women. Except, wait, let me just remind myself. I don't want to make a fool of myself with Rivers Solomon. Wow. They actually use gender-neutral terms. Oh, yeah, she's a... There we go. Got it. So they're all women. Or at least they present themselves as women. 5 of them, except for R.F. Kuang, were actually debuted 2 years ago, 2017. One of them, which one was it? Did I? Ugh, whatever. I think there's one that was, I need to focus my thoughts here. Basically, one of them, I started looking them up, and eventually I just gave up because a lot of their books were boring and incomplete. One authoress had 5 short stories in a novelette, and somehow it counts. And by the way, all of those were published except for one short story in 2017. I don't think that should count. R.F. Kuang wrote current day fiction about 20th century China, and that sounds as interesting as anything else. Basically, one of them, I don't remember who I was. Basically, I was reading the reviews for their work, trying to figure out what their work was about, because as before, a lot of the times these descriptions don't tell you anything of what actually happens or what the stakes are. And in this case, the review went, it was pretty good, decent writing. Now, I'm going to skip down a bit so that the review hides the spoiler parts of it. And then the person, so I click on it, and then the person goes, there is so much incest in this book, and it's not presented as poor. And it was the pendulum of the sun. That's what it was. And like, it just, like, I was like, what? Grim Dark Fantasy Paint Job. I was like, what? And so I go on, and it turns out that, like, there's a crap ton of incest in this book. And it's like, okay. And this was an author who actually produced a novel, and it's like, I don't know why you added this in, but whatever. I guess that's Marion Zimmer Bradley's legacy coming up here. None of the other ones even had anything memorable. Like, I looked through most of them. I don't really think the one who did 5 short stories in a novelette deserves it. Nope, out of there. Oh my goodness. What has River Solomon produced? Unkindness of Ghosts. So she's the last one. Oh yeah. So I remember this one. I doubt the last closet will be featured. Yep, you're right. Even though it probably deserved it most of these. Where is it? Something abusing a woman who's clearly standing for the author. Organized like the antebellum South on the ship called the HSS Matilda. To something. They have sharecroppers. I'm a boy and a girl and a witch all wrapped into one very strange, flimsy, indecisive body. Do you think my body couldn't decide what it wanted to be? Pretty was a strange thing to concern oneself over. Pretty was subjective and fallacious. Ugh. It's one of those things where it's like having a despotic rule on a ship is inherently an interesting idea. But the problem is that these people don't buy books. They don't buy they buy some books, I should say, but most of the time they support it, but they don't necessarily buy it. I know that when it comes to bestsellers, most publishers are the ones who actually cause their book to be bestsellers. And it is quite a sordid affair. Um, Let me see what somebody posted about it. I posted in this Discord I'm talking about. With an Afro-futurist premise grounded in a queer, neuroatypical worldview, An Unkindness of Ghosts is a post-Butler novel many of us have been waiting for. And it's like, oh, no, thank you. Honestly, the Hugos, as everyone knows, this isn't a surprise to anyone. The Hugos are a joke. They've been a joke, and they will continue to be a joke until they finally die. It is the Dragon Awards that you want to pay attention to. It is the Dragon Awards that will take over as masters of what really matters, and that is the people. The people matter. I will admit that I'm not necessarily one of those guys who slavishly puts out what the people want, but I do try not to insult them at any time. To insult them, quite frankly, is stupid. It is hurtful. It destroys what you could build with an otherwise motivated and fantastic fan base. The fact is that they're basically neuroatypical, batshite crazy. Yes, yes. So if they're looking at it, what they're trying to do is they're trying to sew in as many fan bases as they can in hopes that it gives the Hugos legitimacy. But the problem is that they're not sending out their best to tilt with our best. Like it's like in Marvel Civil War, Captain America Civil War, whatever it was. You had like the best of the best fighting each other, and it got pretty crazy. Ant-Man showed up. There was Spider-Man. It was just a fun time. It was a great time, but it was the best versus the best, and then it went crazy, and then things happened. Um, well, I'm never getting a job in the AAA gaming industry. Insulting the core fan base is the best practice, and those incels deserve every bit of verbal abuse that their purple and blue haired, genderqueer, Kojima hating manlet they threw up on stage will certainly do, which I'm expecting to happen in 5 years, at least, if it doesn't all collapse. So, thinking about it, so they're basically trying to hit the Asian and African markets, African descent, black markets, and I include, by the way, Pacific Islanders in that description, because they are their own people. Similar melanin, though. So then we also have several Native American authors who are showing up here and there, namely Rebecca Roanhorse. And they're trying for sort of an alliance against the white man, but it's not really working. I don't see any names I recognize as Jewish unless Kalal is. So it's really just a whole bunch of Asians and African American types, not American, and women. And they're trying to do it. But the thing is that nothing's interesting. It's all boring. It's all unpleasant. It's all virtue signaling nonsense. And of course, that destroys the organization. You all know this. I'm just going over it because it's interesting and it's nice to have an opinion about things. Let's move on. I'm really kind of tired of talking about this. It's unpleasant for me. It's like me. I try my best with the stuff I have. I've had some trouble for the last 4 months almost. So it's like I've kind of been out of it, but now I'm coming back in. I'm trying to do it, and it's like, so what are you writing? Oh, I wrote something about people in space, and it's just the South. Yeah. Okay. I got a John Campbell nomination. Okay. I just said I was black and people voted for it. I'm neuroatypical, genderqueer. I use they today. Have you read her thing on Wikipedia and her own website? It's absolutely horrendous. She is basically a manufactured creature. Like it's all the right points. I'm going to talk about anime now because honestly, this is much more interesting to me. We have the second season of One Punch Man, which honestly is not looking as good as the first one and will probably suffer for it. but I have high hopes that they will pull it out in the end, because honestly, the animation in the first 2 or 3 episodes wasn't that great. It was okay. It was better than average, but it wasn't as great as the last couple episodes. It built up over time. Other things to watch for. We've got Kimetsu. What are you doing? My computer acted weird. Kimetsu no Yaiba, which is about a man trying to defend his sister from turning into a demon, from demon hunters and other demons. It's a manga. It's quite interesting. We have something called Isekai Quartet, which is a comedy piece about isekai protagonists. No. It's basically the same thing as when Fate Stay Night people do their Carnival Phantasm, which honestly was hilarious, a lot of fun, even if I didn't know all the characters. But I don't think this will have the same effect as the masterpiece that was Carnival Phantasm. And by the way, in case you are just dropped by, I have changed my tack to something that is actually entertaining and doesn't hate on their own people. We have a remake of Fruits Basket, which was very popular when I was in high school. Another one I want to see is Fairy Gone. Let's see here. What does this say? Anime girl thighs and navels are my reason for life. Man, get on my level. Have you ever thought about armpits? Anyway, that was disturbing. Fairy Gone, which world takes place where fairies possess and dwell in humans. And there's a whole bunch of like things happening. Honestly, it looks like a pretty terrible Ruby sort of thing, but I'm willing to try it. Fate's Woolly Ram says, of course it is, Anthony. Get. Yeah. Fairy Gone, which it sounds interesting. I have a beef with Ruby, partially because like I loved Monty Ohm back when he was still alive, and yeah, you know, like it's one of those things. Like his death was just nasty back in the day. A lot of people may not know this, but Monty Ohm dying was just like a ripple effect on a lot of different cultures. I think partially that's the reason why Ruby sucks so much. I'm gonna just turn off your camera, Anthony. There we go.
Working on it.
Yep. You're beautiful, Anthony. You're beautiful, but you got a face for radio, Anthony, and a voice for it too. But have you ever heard that one?
I have heard that, but I have no idea what a voice for radio means in context.
Nothing. I'm just encouraging you. So just
it's
so you know,
backhanded compliment.
I practice.
You're ugly, but you sound all right.
You sound all right. My favorite Kevin Hart thing is still the "say it with your chest," and he like looks over at his invisible uncle. It's like Kevin Hart. Anyway, so I've finished up talking about the Hugos because they were starting to depress me. I made the comment that it looks like they're trying to create a grand alliance of all the minorities they can against the evil white man who actually writes good science fiction.
It's okay. All 5 of them or so.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to be too bad in the end.
Yep. And the only name that's worth a dang is on Best Novel is Naomi Novik. Almost all the rest of them are terrible. You saw some excerpts on Pendulum, some that I put on the Discord and other things like that.
I'm going to be honest. I've heard of none of them, and unless it was in conjunction with, oh yeah, this is a maniac who was nominated once upon a time.
And like I've said before, one of them is just 5 short stories and a novelette, of which only one was published in 2018. So it's like it's pretty nasty. But we're not, I'm pretty Hugo'd out here, and I will thank you to remember that because of my fan fictions on Archive of Our Own, I am a Hugo nominated author.
We all are. Anybody who was on Superversive Sci-Fi.
Oh, good. Fantastic. Though I don't think I was a part of the group at the time. But I'm going to put Hugo nominated on everything.
Well,
It's
I always tell people quite legitimately that I am the editor of a Hugo nominated short story.
beautiful.
And that
I
is
love it.
100% true in God Robot. That's not even facetiously true. That's a factual thing.
Beautiful. And honestly, we need more of that in our lives. But then again, I guess not being facetious is, I mean, also Hugo Awards. But I'm
Yeah,
happy with
really.
both. Uh, but
It's
honestly,
good to
it's
mention among normies because it sounds impressive.
it's true. It's true. I'm gonna have Jason put it on all the new publishing things. But
Oh, yeah.
so we've got One Punch Man season two. We both agree that the animation quality is not up to par compared to
No,
what it was before.
no.
I do want to point out that the animation for One Punch Man increased over time. Uh, and while they had some really great scenes, that like it took to the end to be just this amazing
Um,
uh, thing. Now,
Episode one had this ridiculous dream fight with like the mole people that was absolutely insanely well
that was a
animated.
good
So,
one.
uh,
That was a good one. I had forgotten about it. Um, but
I think they front loaded that to impress people, but
no, I'm just saying that I would like to see the final battle. I would like to see what happens in the middle before I make my final judgment. It's like it's one
I'm
of those things. They
I'm
could be finishing
so
it up
not
even now.
optimistic.
Neither am I, but you know. Molly Ram says, "Man, I'll take manga over anime any day." The manga that's done by the Eye Shield 20 something or 21 creator is absolutely gorgeous. Every scene is a wallpaper.
That's the thing. Unless this can pull a rabbit out of its hat somehow, I'll watch a couple episodes and I'll just pick up the manga.
Yep,
Unless this can pull a rabbit out of its hat and somehow be like, turns out that it was just a bad trailer.
yep. We've
But
got,
who knows?
yeah, you're right. And that trailer, honestly, they should have polished that up way more. I heard somebody did a good thing where it's like they're basically pumping it out while it still will make money. But the problem is that they should have just waited for the original studio or planned ahead for the original studio to do it at a certain point. Just because people are going to wait for One Punch Man, people will wait for quality if it is top tier quality. It's like you don't want to wait for popcorn, right? You will wait for a steak.
Well, I think what scared them was Attack on Titan actually, because Attack on
Really?
Titan was the thing for a brief period of time. But I think in retrospect, it was shockingly brief because then they took way too long for season two, and
Yep.
people looked at it and said, "Oh yeah, this wasn't that good after all, was it?"
Yep.
And it's not a disaster of a show, but when you're waiting that long and then you have enough time to look and realize that, hey, maybe it was kind of overrated, it's not a good look. Thing is, One
Yep.
Punch Man gets better over time, so it
Oh
might have
yeah.
been a miscalculation.
I had to fight through the like original episodes. I only loved One Punch Man when the Sea King showed up. Like before
Oh,
then, I was like, but then
oh
it's
my
like,
God, the Sea King arc
oh,
is
the
one
Sea
of my
King.
all time favorite anime storylines. The Sea King arc.
Oh yeah, it's
I
absolutely fantastic.
I teared up in the Moomin Rider scene, and I will tell people that
We all did. I
it's
it was. Ooh,
it was an unbelievable arc, and the final fight with Boros is quite possibly the greatest animated, at least television animated fight scene of all time.
oh, it's up there. It's certainly up there. Certainly on a show I've seen. It's oh
The final battle of Gurren Lagann, maybe.
yeah. Uh, there's a couple of fights here and there that are like really good, but if we're talking spectacle, just spectacle, ooh, that and Gurren Lagann, amazing. I'm actually looking over what I've actually bought, and it's like
Because they thought it
there's
was.
the ending of Redline is
Oh,
also
no,
pretty
that's
amazing. So is Summer War, but that's not a show.
not.
So the things that have interested me is the One Punch Man season two, even if it might be kind of bad. animation wise. Kimetsu no Yaiba, which is about
Yes,
which
I've been tracking that for a long time.
I've read parts of the manga, and while I dropped it because, yeah, I'm not really into Japanese samurai sort of thing. It was interesting, especially since he's fighting to. Isn't it the one he's fighting to defend his sister who's turning into a demon?
Yes, it
Yeah.
had the premise sounded a little similar to Full Metal Alchemist, actually, which is always a good thing. I'll just be
Oh
happy
yeah.
if there's a sibling relationship with no incest.
Oh, it's Japan though. Anyway, it's looking pretty good. I haven't
Oh,
seen enough of it, the manga, to really say. But if you say it's good, it's probably there.
I haven't
Um,
watched it. I've just heard. I've had people telling me keep an
ah,
eye out for this for a long time, like
I
months
gotcha.
ago. People have been were pointing out the show to me.
Yep, I dig it. Um, then we have the next tier on Mal, which is Isekai Quartet, Fruits Basket, and Bungo Stray Dogs. Uh, I don't really have an interest in any of them, and I
Neither
honestly,
do I.
yep, and honestly, Isekai Quartet is clearly a money grab, and it's not going to be as funny as Carnival Phantasm or anything else like that. Have you seen Carnival Phantasm?
No, no, I haven't.
It's Fate series, and it's basically all their characters interacting in funny things. It's
Oh, movie
funny and
that's coming
lighthearted.
out this season.
Hmm?
Promare,
Oh yes!
the new Trigger
Oh,
film. That looks
yes,
fantastic.
please.
And I hope it airs in theaters because I will go and make a drive to see it.
Same here. Same here. Like I was sold when they had that one scene where like the giant robot creates a throne out of ice and flame and then sits on it. It's like, oh, this is what Daddy likes. Isekai is trash and I can't get enough of it. Change yourself, Wooly Ram. Only you can decide what's trash or not. But it is trash. Hey, Bar One Studios. Um, I was like,
Is this a good time to bring up Shield Hero? Because I mentioned it before.
yes, I actually have a video on Shield Hero coming up, and I hope you do one too. Like it, you can
I did
just
an
support it.
article on it already, but I do need to say the reason that I'm bringing it up now is because I brought it up last live stream and then I wrote my very negative article on it. And I'm going to give Shield Hero some credit here and say that the last episode was probably the best of the entire show, at least since episode 4, when he had the fight with the Spear Hero over Raftalia. It Last episode was not a perfect episode by any means. I had some problems with it, but it leaned into what the show's strengths should be. It
Right.
leaned into all of the things that Shield Hero should be doing to be a compelling watch. It made the Shield Hero's life really hard. It added some intrigue into the background that seemed like it was legitimately interesting. This conspiracy against the Shield Hero. I did have some issues. The growing of the harem really,
Uh,
really annoys me. Like, really, especially Raftalia getting jealous. And it just happens to be another young, fairly pretty-ish lolly who joins his harem.
is that 3?
And Raftalia just has to get jealous over it because apparently, immediately, like, she has to signal to us that she is indeed a potential romantic rival, which is annoying. And
Yeah.
I do I had a little bit of an issue with how dumb their plan was at the beginning. Like, it was pretty unclear what they were trying to do, and it seemed really weird and awkward.
Hmm.
Like, were they trying to kill Melty, or were they not trying to kill her? And
Didn't they
just
like sell her into
immediately,
slavery or something? I can't
it
remember.
was odd because it seemed like a really really bad attempt to kill Melty with the spear hero standing right or the shield hero standing right there. But then they react immediately to the fact that she's not killed, making it seem like they were intending to frame him all along. But then Melty says that she's convinced that her sister was, in fact, trying to kill her. So it was kind of confusing. But mostly, that's a nitpick. My only major gripe was really the harem thing, which drove me up a wall. But
Yeah.
Otherwise, it was actually a very good episode. And I got to give it a lot of credit for that. It leaned into what the Shield heroes should be doing to be a good show. And it addressed a lot of what my issues were. I don't want to hate the Shield hero. I've actually been watching it because I don't hate it. I just don't. It's like on the bare minimum level of what I will put on each week.
Of course.
But
Well, personally,
if it can improve and become a legitimately good show, I would be happy to have that happen. I hope it does.
I hope you'll check out the video when I put it up where I talk about it, in contrast with 12 Kingdoms and Swan Knight Sun.
With
Um,
Swan Knight's son, really, I'm interested to see that.
yes. I think it's a little tenuous, but if you think about it, while Gil is not as cynical, and it's not as cynical a world, it's an ideal world compared to, even though it's ours, compared to,
It's a dark world in
it's a
some
dark
ways.
world, but it's not cynical. The elves
No,
can be cynical, but fundamentally it's ideal. But if you look at how the two sort of interact with the people around them, and how Gil overcomes hardship, where the tension is, like Naofumi has no tension. The only time there's tension is when he's accused of rape. Um,
and
other than that,
and again, this recent episode actually, I'll give some credit.
so I was only in the context of Volume One, just so you know.
Oh, okay, got it.
Uh, but to me that's very important anyway. The harem is mostly kids. But they can level up. They could level up fast. Bar One Studios. Um,
Even Raftalia, you have to remember that Raftalia is technically a lolly herself,
yeah,
even though they age her up so that she is very, very clearly buxom.
which was
But
BS. It was so BS. It's not. It's not how you do anything. But whatever. You know what? I don't want to talk about this too much. Just because it's like it's one of those things. Like deeper down the rabbit hole I go, it's like I'll give them credit. Their magic system and the leveling system was pretty amazing, but everything else is kind of garbage, and it's the best of its kind.
yes,
Which should,
that's the sad thing. The sad thing is that there is basically, I can't think of any trapped in a video game show that I actually like outside of Log Horizon. That and
that's
Konosuba, but that's making fun of it. That is it. Log
there's no game, no
Horizon is
life.
the
But
only one I would consider genuine quality like that. I would recommend unreservedly. I would say if you like anime, watch Log Horizon. Shield Hero, I would recommend with heavy, heavy reservations. And Konosuba, I would only recommend if you want to see a parody. It works best for people. I enjoyed it a lot more when I learned more about what it was making fun of. Then I realized how effective of a parody it was. Like Kazuma's anti-harem
yeah,
thing is actually Shield Hero makes it even clearer. It's actually hysterical
yeah.
what Kazuma's harem is when you realize the sorts of shit that these isekai will pull all the time. And
So
then
going over like going over Isekai to me, Log Horizon, No Game No Life, and 12 Kingdoms are the three that come to mind most readily as being good. Isekai of a sort.
well, I'm talking
Um,
specifically trapped in the video game because there's a lot of
yes,
broader isekai, Spirited Away, Vision of
yeah.
Escaflowne, tons and tons of
I
it,
need
and
to
some
watch
of it is
Escaflowne.
brilliant. Escaflowne is a great show.
But anyway, Bar One Studios recommends Overlord and Goblin Slayer, and I agree. Though Overlord
Goblin Slayer
is
is on the edge of isekai. Overlord is isekai though.
Goblin Slayer is not isekai at all.
It's trapped in a game though, in the sense like
I
they
mean,
roll for initiative. I mean, they have
yeah,
game classes. It's a game world, but
sure, it's a game world, but I wouldn't call it isekai. And honestly, it's none of the people sort of know that the dice is being rolled.
well, I'll put
You
it to
get
you
that?
this way. I would consider it closer to the genre of Shield Hero than Spirited Away, even though Spirited Away is an actual isekai.
Right. Um, okay. All right. I won't. Oh. See, the thing is that So the way I view it is that Goblin Slayer is not an isekai because nobody comes from another world.
It's not. It's absolutely like
Okay.
definitionally, it is not an isekai. There's no question about that.
But it's similar to the trashy fantasy that calls itself isekai.
Yes.
Okay. You know what? I won't fight that. That's legitimate. I think it's better than that. I think it gets better the longer it goes on, and it was pretty okay, except for the shocking bits in the first one, because it builds a relatively simple story, then expands and expands and expands. And I thought it was just hilarious that the Dark Lord is killed by a random group of adventurers on the off screen.
That's
But
actually fantastic.
but then they
But I didn't love Goblin Slayer, but I have no like when I say that I always mention like I have no moral objection to Goblin Slayer. I have no particular like there's nothing in it like Shield Hero has the harem that drives me up a wall or the witch fulfillment thing. There's nothing like that. It's just that I wasn't a huge fan of the show. It happened not to be up my alley.
now
But
there's a
it could
recommendation.
certainly become better and then I would enjoy it, but it's not there yet.
So there's a recommendation from Wooly Ram, which I heartily recommend, and that's Dungeon Meshi, which is about eating. It's basically translates out to eating a dungeon or something like that, and it's about a group of adventurers who are penniless, and so they eat their way through a dungeon, like eating like mushroom men and stuff like that, kelpies and all that good stuff. On their way down to try and save their knight's sister from being fully digested by a dragon and thus being unresurrectable. It's actually really good. I recommend the manga to you.
Oh, that sounds hilarious.
It's pretty funny, and it actually has really good legs of drama in it, which surprised me quite a bit.
Now, here's the problem that I'm having too is that they're calling this modern era like a revival of isekai. And again, when they say isekai, what they actually mean is trapped in a video game stories, but
yeah,
which have somehow I'm not even
normies
sure
don't understand, and they won't be made to understand.
Somehow that's become synonymous with isekai. I don't know. I'm sure there's a history there that I know I have no interest in it. But anyway, they're calling this like a revival of the trapped in a video game stories, but from where I'm sitting, all it is, it's all of the same problems that they've always had with slightly higher production values and very, very slight twists on convention that fool people into thinking they're good. Like that time I got reincarnated as a slime is not a good show. It has all of the problems that every other isekai show has, with the exception that is admittedly welcome that he has no harem. But he is a wish fulfillment protagonist who is incredibly overpowered, who goes through like no hardships in his world, and there is almost and Slime has this thing where like there's almost no conflict. It's incredibly boring. But people like it because it has a slightly comedic bent and it's fairly good natured. And yet it still has all of the biggest problems that isekai have. Plus it's boring.
Yep. That's just the worst.
It's a terrible show, and I'm not going to say I don't understand why people like it, because I've read enough that I know exactly why people like it. I just think that if you dislike those trapped in a video game stories for all of the typical reasons that people give, then I don't really understand why you would like the Slime Show, because it has the same issues.
I always try to avoid personal empowerment or whatever it is through my writing. I think that's just like the worst thing that you can seek for in a book.
This is why Mob is one of my favorite ever protagonists in a story. I love Mob, of Mob Psycho 100.
Oh yeah.
He is just the best. Like, I remember after I finished season 1, I did an article that was about Mob, because I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen a better role model character than Mob. Even like the shonen heroes have a lot of that too. Like Deku is a good role model for kids if I were to push someone. But what makes Mob in particular special is that Mob is really, really a loser at the beginning of the show. He is the sort of person, he's a loser with a special power. And this is the sort of person who is normally turned into the protagonist by virtue of placing them in a situation where their power is appreciated. And
Mm-hmm.
Mob Psycho 100 goes the literal exact opposite route. And it is so refreshing and it's so brilliant that he does that. I can't get enough of how well written of a character Mob is and
Yep.
how likable that makes him too.
And
Because
how
it's like he's a nerdy, antisocial loser of a character when we first meet him, and this is what makes him such a great character. And normally people do that and they go, oh, I could relate to this guy. And that's why, like the Flash and the Flash TV show or whatever.
mm-hmm.
And this is true of Mob as well, except Mob is all about him recognizing that those are flaws and working hard at overcoming them and not leaning on his special powers as an excuse.
Mm-hmm. And there's a world of difference between having something like that and having something like Naofumi and others who are just like blank spaces that you can put yourself onto to make yourself feel good, to make yourself have some desire. It's far better to suffer in this world and to desire better than it is to put yourself into another world and never improve. Um, it's and that's basically half the moral of Mob Psycho 100. And it's oh, I need to see season 2.
And also,
Um,
Regan's just the greatest character who's ever been created ever in the history of mankind.
he's an actual male, like, what's the word I want to use? Like, mentor to a kid who needs it, who doesn't seem to have like much of a father influence. Like,
Plus,
wow,
everything he does it's hysterical.
he is.
Everything Regan does is hysterical.
It is. He's probably just one of the best characters.
They have this scene in Mob Psycho 100 season 2 in this very serious episode. Mob Psycho 100 season 2 went really really shonen at one point where like they had this crazy epic battle with superpowers, and then finally at the end of the episode, and they're all taking it dead seriously, and the animation is incredible. And finally, the villain at the end of the episode goes, I'm going to use my psychic powers to block out all other sensation and focus only on your psychic energy so that I could predict wherever you'll be at any point. And then Regan slugs him because Regan has no psychic powers, so he can't
Beautiful.
detect him at all. And Regan slugs him, and I was like doubled over laughing. It was so well executed just because of like how they had set up that entire episode. Everything
Mm-hmm.
played so seriously. The powers played so seriously. The super epic battle, and then Regan just slugs this dude. And I was like, that's just brilliant, right?
So I'm going to point something out real quick. Baldwin Studios makes a great point. I think the point of Shield Hero, though, is that the world is that it's a critique of game world that is stuck in a video game world, like you've been mentioning. And Isekai Dream in general, who the hell would want to be here? It's more complex than you think. You'd be awful to get off on this as a reality as opposed to a fantasy.
Yeah,
the
that is
problem
certainly what Shield Hero claims it is.
It claims, but it plays itself straight. The problem with it is that even though it says it has a cynical thing, Log Horizon and No Game, No Life are much more of a critique and a realistic portrayal of how it would be than anything else. If it was more like 12 Kingdoms, where the lady doesn't have any powers, or in the anime where they introduced that friend character who wants to be there because she's a Chunyabo weeb as all get out. It would have more of a meaning. But Shield Hero is still the Shield Hero. He's still powerful. He's still got the harem. Even if he's not interested in the harem and they're interested in him, that doesn't mean anything.
That just makes it even better.
Yes, and because most of the people who watch this, who devote themselves to this, are themselves sexless but desire many women. Maybe they have women friends around them who they can't touch. I assure you, even though Naofumi has certain moments of realism and certain good moments that come out of it, making it the best of its kind, it's still it's still completely taken by all the bad parts of isekai. If you want good isekai and you want good game, you want No Game No Life. You want Log Horizon.
Now, Log Horizon's really interesting too, because Log Horizon, in theory, is is a much less cynical show, and it is. I mean, I would call it tonally not cynical at all. It's actually a pretty fun show to watch in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
However, Log Horizon is not a wish fulfillment show. Log Horizon is too smart for that. It has elements of it, but it goes beyond that to critique that idea. Shiraway is an excellent example. Shiraway as a protagonist is a super genius. I mean, he's like in the world of Log Horizon, he's essentially like a Ben Franklin, or a George Washington, like a statesman genius who behind the scenes has basically almost single-handedly created and stabilized their society. So you realize that Shiraway must be an extraordinary person, but there's a flip side to this. Shiraway and all of the characters in Log Horizon, or at least many of them, are eerily okay with being stuck in this fantasy world. And Shiraway, especially, being such an incredible person, and he just has absolutely no regrets about being stuck in this world, apparently, or very little. So, what happened to Shiraway? Like, why is he like this? And
Mm-hmm.
because Log Horizon is a great show and not just a good show or a fun show, in season 2, we learn more about Shiraway. And we learn that when he was in the real world, he used to frequently run off as a child and consider suicide. And you realize that Shiraway was really, really messed up in real life. And Akatsuki is the same way. Akatsuki is constantly role playing as a ninja in game. This is bizarre. She is now stuck there permanently, and she has embodied the identity of a ninja assassin. What sort of person would do this? What sort of tragedy would need to occur in your life? And we learn, and I think they elaborate more in the book, but it's there in the anime as well, that Akatsuki has this really, really big insecurity issue that she feels powerless all the time. Because of her height, she's ignored. And in the novels, you even get the reveal that she's hit on by pedophiles sometimes, which is also great because it actually criticizes the concept of a lolly being sexualized. Because again, Log Horizon is smarter than that. Log Horizon is a great show. It recognizes that these characters are messed up in some way, that there's something wrong with them. And
Mm-hmm.
it is that's what puts it above the standard isekai trash. It knows who its characters are and it knows who its audience is, and it's not afraid to portray it realistically, where shows like Shield Hero, Sword Art Online portray it idealistically. They portray the sort of
Mm-hmm.
character that you would want to be, that you'd want to insert yourself into. Log Horizon portrays that sort of character to an extent, but it goes further to show us what they actually are, what there really would be like. That a person like Shiraway is in some ways an incredibly tragic character. That Akatsuki is an incredibly tragic character. But once you dig past the surface, and of course they would be, it makes perfect sense. The sorts of people who would act the way they do aren't normal people, and it's not healthy. But a show like Shield Hero, a show like Sword Art, doesn't recognize this. It doesn't acknowledge this. Wally Ram, good question. Why would I want realism in my entertainment?
Flavor.
Well,
Straight up. Like it's so for me, I like having a little bit of realism in my
that's a good
things.
question.
It is a good question. It's a fantastic question. Yeah, we have realism every day. I'm sick of it. But the thing is that like if you want, so I'm trying to say this the right way.
It's
So
bad
these,
for you.
it's bad for you. With isekai, it's a complete separation from your old life and into a new life because you're supposed to, I say this exactly the way I said it because you transpose yourself onto that character. No longer are you some salary man, a janitor at a gym, a stalker at Walmart. I'm the janitor at the gym, by the way. You
I work
are,
at Walmart.
you are, Sid Vicious, master of the 7 elemental demon swords that are locked into 7 different species of hot women. Um, and every one of your dreams is met with only a little bit of difficulty. Perhaps you experience some difficulty at the beginning to heighten the stakes, like they did in Shield Hero, and make it seem like it's deeper than it actually is. But you eventually come out to be the unstoppable god of this world, and nothing you ever want is ever denied you, for long, anyway. I like realism in the same way I love Swan Knight's Son. It's set in this world, or Jim Butcher. It's set in this world. There are unpleasant things in this world. Gil couldn't find a job, and he's like, "Look, I'll sweep up. Like, give me less than minimum wage, whatever you can afford. Just give me a job." I can't do that, sweetie. Government regulations, which is very. I giggle every time I read that.
I thought that I'm going to give John, as much as I love Swan Knight's Son, I thought that was too on the nose and came out of nowhere. However, with that said, it was also accurate.
It was pretty accurate. So you've got that stuff going on there, and that's funny, but I don't like to go true realism. I don't read history, not too much. I read history, excuse me. I don't read sort of like sad people in this world in the rain in coffee shops. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's like, here are some abused people going on a road trip. They'll find themselves today. And there's like scenes of them walking through a field, running through a forest. There's some sort of fight between two of the characters. That's true realism, quote unquote. And eventually you become so realistic that it becomes boring, or it becomes unrealistic. Or it becomes a part of the reality you want to see that doesn't actually exist, but you claim it's realistic. Then, yes, they do. Almost all isekai protagonists that don't have a character are designed for us to put ourselves into them. Not the right doesn't do this as much as the left does, I want to say. I don't put myself in Gil. I look up to Gil because he's like the older brother everyone needs to have. But that's not the same as me wanting to be Gil. And I could go over that. That's like its own video, honestly. That's a great video idea. But here we go. Hey, I'm going to say what Anthony's typing. See, the world gets me down just like Naofumi. Just give me the change and I can be a badass with a harem like Naofumi. Show all of them. And it's Gamma Fantasy. And we've talked about this. It's something you just have to be super careful about. It's better to, like, you can deep dive into a world. It can be so realistic, but really you're still you. And the second you get your eyes off that page or that anime screen, you are back to being you. It is better to be you at all times. Like as it says in Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, always be the same man no matter what happens. And I'm summarizing, but that's a very true statement. Of course, I'm not a Stoic, but ultimately,
the Stoics had a lot to say that was correct.
Yep. Right-wing fiction is awful in its own way.
Well, yes, it can be.
Of soy evangelical Christians and rhino cucks. Oh yeah, I can't stand soy evangelical Christians. That's it's like I read Ted Dekker and it was good up until the end, and then I realized it was just emotional schlock, and I was like, but that's sort of not what we're really here for. A lot of this stuff, like, there's a whole, I don't want to sound too weird about this, but there's like a whole bunch of secret wisdom that you can pick up by reading enough, thinking about it enough, and desiring it enough. I'm here, I'm doing this because I desire it. He says he just wants plenty of booze and vidya. I kind of do too, Jin. But I also want to create. I want to create things better than those who would call themselves my enemy. I have no enemies, but I have people who have treated themselves like my enemies. And so I would like to show them all. There's that Gamma Fantasy that secretly I am the best writer of my generation, blah, blah, blah. But to do that, I have to write books. I have to create things. I have to study. I have to be studious. I have to discipline myself to write, to not write crap, and to ensure that what I am writing is the perfect thing for these things and not what I simply want to put into it. Way too Bradford Walker. Hey, man, how you doing? Hope you're feeling well. Way too much gamma wish fulfillment and fiction on both sides of the Pacific. You are absolutely correct.
Yep.
Japan is divided into 3 different groups of people. 1/3 is otakus, male and female. 1/3 is women, and 1/3 is men who do not wish to marry the tigers that have been raised.
Well, I'll give Japanese fiction this, and it's no coincidence, by the way, that this is almost always the most popular. The shonen genre, uh, is actually, for the most part, I would say, full of what I would call very healthy role models.
Yes.
If I were, for kids growing up, you want to show your kids something, I would show them My Hero Academia in a heartbeat. Deku is a great role model. He starts off, I actually hated Deku originally, and this is a compliment to the show, by the way. I hated Deku originally. He cried all the time. He was a friggin' wimp. I mean, he was always whining, and now he's probably my favorite character in My Hero Academia. And that is a testament to what a good shonen show should do. All those shows that are about that character who wants to be the very best, like no one ever was, Deku shows significant character growth. He becomes a better person, and he does so by working incredibly hard. And that's a message I would be happy to show kids, and I think it's no coincidence that shonen shows, for better or worse, some are very high quality, some are very, very low quality, are almost always the most popular shows to come out of Japan. That's not a coincidence.
So, Bar One Studios, the sexlessness of the main character only exists so that a reader can more easily transpose themselves onto him. Honestly, I assure you that what Naofumi has around him is a harem. Straight up. Sure. Not all groups of...
Talia considers them that, no question.
Yeah. Like, other characters view it that way. Even though Naofumi, who is the point of view character, doesn't go for it himself. It doesn't.
I'm going to disagree with Bar One Studios. I don't know if he's a well-known Superversive, and I don't know his name, but I'm going to disagree with that. Hi, Bar One Studios. You're cool. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to mildly disagree that they're morality pets. I think that they have a Hot Springs episode. It's awful. It made me want to kill myself. They're a harem.
You're sitting there making a noose. And then it's like the episode's over and it's like, oh, phew, you put it away. Not today, friend. Let's talk about...
I didn't finish it. I started it, then I looked up the episode to see if it really did go the way I thought it would. It did. It did go. So before anyone goes, you didn't even finish the episode. Oh, I know what happened. It's bad. It was ugh. So no, they're a harem. They're 100% a harem. Raftalia considers them a harem. Even though the Shield Hero does not see Melty or Philo as romantic counterparts, he doesn't even really see Raftalia for that matter, but even though he doesn't see them romantically, they are absolutely there for you to project yourself into. For you to be like, I'm surrounded by hot women who want me, and I could reject them if I want to.
Yep.
Again, that's how awesome you are. People literally line up around you.
So let's just move on for a bit, because we've talked about this week and next week and last week and probably next week.
Yeah, I know. I know.
So
I know.
Yeah, we've said all that we need to say about this.
Okay, moving on. Yeah, so the show's coming up.
Yep.
Look, there are actually some really, really good ones coming up. I really want to watch Dororo. I haven't yet, because I haven't had a good platform to do it on. If I'm pirating, I need to use my crappy little 2-in-1 tablet laptop, and I don't want to do that. Otherwise, I need to make a whole production of connecting it to my TV, and then I can't do anything else with it. Or I need to use my Xbox, and you can't really pirate off of an Xbox One. So I've not been able to watch Dororo since I don't have Prime. What I would do So my dad, however, has Prime, and I could probably mooch off of him, which is great news because now I could watch Dororo.
I dig it. So, the anime I kind of want to see that's OG is Fairy Gone, which is about fairies and hunting fairies. Like I was saying before you showed up, I kind of view it as a cheap rip-off version of Ruby, except probably with better writing. It kind of sounds super generic, like fairy soldiers working for the government. Um, it's, but I just kind of want to see it, see how well it is. It might tickle that itch I've kind of got for a good fantasy anime. Kind of doesn't. Um, let's see, IBO, good, not great, but good. What's IBO?
Iron Blood Orphans.
Oh, Iron Blooded Orphan. Right. Then we have Kenja no Magu, who is a light novel. What?
I'm in the middle of Iron Blood Orphans now, and I think it's great.
It is.
That's another topic I wanted to get on, though. I'll let you finish what you're saying because it is interesting. But about how I fundamentally, the more and more I think about it, the more I really do disagree that anime has gotten so much worse since the 90s. I just don't agree with it. I see too much good stuff.
I think we've just come out of a dip, though. But this season is not as good as last season.
It's this season actually has been. It's not as good as last season, but this year so far looks like it's going to be really good. I mean, Kaguya-sama was excellent. I greatly enjoyed it. The Promised Neverland had some pacing problems, but was very good. Mob Psycho season 2 was absolutely fantastic. We're going to get season 4 of My Hero Academia later this year, and if the manga is anything to go by, it should be, if anything, better than the previous seasons, because this arc coming up in the manga is ludicrously great.
Is it the?
This is a really exciting year. Promare looks good. I've heard a lot about this new Demon show. It should be fun.
Another show that I'm interested in is by Studio Bones, and it's about Mars and this musicians on Mars that might be interesting.
I saw that.
Carol and Tuesday. I don't have high hopes for it though, and that's skipping, by the way, like the light novel and 3 school harem shows that are probably trash. Then we have something called Hitori Boki something, which is about cute girls doing cute things and having interactions. Sounds like they're trying to steal a march on.
There was one cute girls doing cute things show, though I don't remember the title that I was looking at, that actually looked like something I might try, because it had the big gimmick of it was that it was entirely silent. And I'm like,
okay. Shoujo?
Yeah, maybe. That's enough of a thing. I'm like, that's actually an interesting enough gimmick that I may give it a shot, because I really like those sorts of ideas. If you're good, silent storytelling, if it's done well, can be very interesting.
Absolutely. I'm looking for that. What's the name of that one chick? Who is? I'll find it in a second. There is a manga that's going to become an anime this year that, oh my goodness, it's not even in the speech impediment TV tropes. How could this be? Maybe it's in webcomics. But basically there's this one thing where it's very popular. Nope. About this one chick who has speech. She can't talk to people, communication disorder, and so she's like beautiful, and there's romance and stuff like that. It's pretty great. But I'm pretty sure that, like, since where is it? Where'd my little tab go? Because two of them, 3 kind of, have that sort of theme to them about communication disorder. I'm pretty sure they're trying to steal a march on her, and her probably going to be wildly popular anime. Of course, the anime for me is Seiwayaki Kitsune no Senko-san, which looks like to be a Monster Girl thing. That's going to be a delight. Mhm.
I
So,
mean,
mhm.
yeah, of the season, the one that I'm most looking forward to is Promare, followed by the Demon Girl show, which has a Japanese name that I will never ever remember. So I'm not even gonna
I'll talk
bother.
you through it.
I'm just gonna call it the Demon Girl show. Uh,
Yeah.
that show is something I've been looking forward to for a while. My excitement for One Punch Man, I'm gonna try it. I really will, but
Hmm.
it's waned so much since that trailer. I will definitely give it a shot. I hope it pleasantly surprises me and it was just a really bad trailer somehow. But I'm no longer as excited for it as I would have been. Uh, Promare looks like it'll be awesome though, so I hope
Oh
they
yeah.
air it in the States and I don't just need to pirate it.
Yep.
That
I agree. There's looking through the season. There's a couple of musical shows.
Yeah.
There's a mysterious thing about a continent showing up that's by the same people who did Helsing and
Oh,
Drifters. I think it's the
gonna
same
have to
people.
keep on gonna have to keep an eye on that then. That sounds interesting when you say the concept, and the team has done good work, so I'll have to keep an eye.
Yep. No, it's not the same studio as the ones that did this. My bad. But
Is it the same creators though? Because like Trigger, it's just the Gurren
it's
Lagann
the
team
same
that
art style, and it's freaking me out. It's the exact same art style, but I can't see anything about it. There's like
I
almost
wonder if it's like
no
the same
information.
director, or some key animators are the same. Could be,
Could
but
be.
I don't know. I
Yeah,
have no idea.
there's no background on it. I can't find who who's working on it. That's weird. You know what? Whatever. It might be interesting. Um,
I'll take a look. I'll take a look at it. I mean, the idea of a continent popping up out of nowhere offers so is such a weird idea with so many storytelling opportunities that could grow out of that. That I'm willing to give it a look.
okay, so the next one is the one that you're talking about is Joshi Kase, which is about the silent thing, which means that there are three communication disordered anime coming out this season
That's
before
bizarre.
the other one. That's weird.
Yeah, there was absolutely nothing to it. It literally just describes itself. I think it even calls itself in one description like a cute girls doing cute things show. But then it
Yeah.
goes, but it's silent. And I'm like, okay, you have my attention. You do
Uh,
have my attention. I'll give you that. I want to give it a shot.
yep.
I mean, I'm not expecting anything particularly interesting,
Hmm.
but but if you're willing to take a risk like that, you have my respect to an extent.
Absolutely. So besides Palmare, there's nothing really I want to see. Um, I'm just sort of scrolling through it up and down, like the movies right now. There's a bunch of movies for series I don't really care for. Um, ooh, there's another Girl in Panzer movie. I care about that quite a bit. Uh, but other than that, what is this?
Yeah, the big ones for me, I'm gonna keep up with JoJo 5 because that's been
Beautiful.
awesome. Yeah.
Yep.
That by the way, JoJo 5 has been great. It's probably one of the best JoJo shows, which is saying something. So it's a pretty consistent franchise. Uh
I'm I'm okay. Honestly, I kind like number five is the big one for a lot of people, but to me, it's just kind of, I just kind of
I'm
want to
having
watch.
a lot of fun with it.
Oh yeah.
I'm really enjoying it. I think that the battles are entertaining. Uh I think that the characters are all very distinct and entertaining as well.
Hmm.
It's a good set of Joe Bros.
Oh yeah. It's
It's
pretty
also
great.
kind of strange. You really get the impression with this one that he waffled for a little bit on figuring out what exactly he was going to do until he came up with an idea that he realized he liked and then zeroed in on it. Because
Hmm.
it starts off all over the place. You even have Koichi showing up and he like hasn't showed up since again. And
Yeah.
you feel like he knew he had this idea of I want my main character to take over the mob one day. Okay, that's fine.
He's gonna
and
be a
then he goes,
gangsta.
so, yeah. So let's get him into the mob, and then we'll have him waffling around. Then they'll go to this island, and then he hits on this idea with the boss's daughter. And then he goes, "Okay, now I have." And he goes, "I think I have something here," and he's latched onto that. And ever since they met the boss's daughter, it's been very tightly
Yep.
plotted. It's been nonstop fights, literal nonstop fights.
Oh yeah. There's no real lost time in it. It's all tightly plotted. It's all just right.
Now, I
Just
have
right.
never read the manga, but my prediction right now is I am pretty sure the way that they're lampshading it that Bucciarati's going to die, which makes a lot of sense because he's the leader right now, but
Yes.
JoJo's got to be the leader in the end.
Yes.
So
I mean,
they're
they're
lampshading it very heavily in the show.
well.
Like
He's
that.
already like. I won't spoil it for
He
you.
has
I
one
won't
foot
spoil
in
it
the
for
grave right
you.
now.
Yes, that's a good
So,
way to.
and it
Um.
makes sense. It makes a lot of sense too, because right now he's the leader, yet
Mhm.
JoJo's the main character. So if somebody's going to take over for the boss and lead the company, it can't be Bucciarati because he's not the main character, and
Yep.
yet everybody likes him, and we have no real reason. He has no real reason to step down. I mean, why would he? And
Yep.
for that matter, JoJo wouldn't really ask him to step down because he likes Bucciarati. So the
Mhm.
conclusion is they're going to have to kill him off,
Yes.
which
You're
is too bad
absolutely
because
right.
I like the character, but uh, I don't have a problem with that narratively. I think it's a good idea. I think it's a fine way to go with it.
Hmm.
But
No,
whatever.
they do it really well. There's some awesome scenes and awesome explanations that'll come up. That'll be well worth your time. The
Okay,
next,
good.
so
I'm
they've
looking
just so
forward to that.
people know they've finished the notorious big fight, which was
Yes,
pretty amazing. Um,
it was.
and now what we'll get is the Metallica, who's the last of the La Squadra assassins, versus Doppio, who's the boss's right hand man, and it's a pretty amazing fight.
Who? Which
Uh,
one's Doppio? Is he part of the one of the Joe Bros?
he's been introduced, but he's not one of the Joe Bros.
Okay.
I'm being incredibly clever with my words. You'll see in the end.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm interested. I'm very interested for sure. Uh, it's Fate. Fate's Censer.
Oh
Anyway,
yeah,
moving on
JoJo's
from
Bizarre
that.
Adventure is actually quite linear. Fate is not, and they make more Fate stuff than JoJo stuff, which is sad. So that's really all I have for today. We've talked about
Okay.
anime,
I want
manga.
to go then. I'm gonna go on my rant right now that I was waiting on about modern anime, post 90s anime,
Yep.
because I've thought more about it since the last discussion where it was brought up. Like, is anime been worse since the 90s? That is a very, very, very common claim among people in the pulp rev slash superversive Stalia Appendix N crowd. This whole
Yep.
group that hangs around with each other. It's been one of the truisms. Animes have gotten worse since the 90s, and the more I have thought about it, the less and less I have been convinced that that is the case. I genuinely, truly no longer think that that's the case. There are just too many good to brilliant shows post 2000. You got
Mm.
Death Note, you have the Full Metal Alchemist shows, especially Brotherhood. You have, and I bring this up each time, even though it's not my favorite, but it's worth bringing up, Steins Gate, which is
Hmm.
not my favorite, but is a universally considered classic. So
Yeah.
I can't really argue with that. We have the JoJo shows. We
Oh yeah.
have, I mean, just this season, we've had Mob Psycho 100 over the past 2 years. We've had probably the best shonen since Yu Yu Hakusho in My Hero Academia, the first great shonen since Yu Yu Hakusho.
We've
Unless you
had
want
Redline and the three latest One Piece movies. Oh,
to count Hunter x Hunter 2011, I guess, but I would not. I think Hunter x Hunter 2011 has brilliant moments, but as a whole, it's not as consistent.
mm. I
Although
think. Mm.
I'll give the Netero Meruem fight in Hunter x Hunter 2011. when the Chimera Ant King faces the head of the chairman of the Hunter Association. I gotta give it props because that may genuinely be the greatest fight I have ever seen. It
Oh,
it truly, really was. And yes, Bradford Walker's right. I didn't see Thunderbolt, but Ironblood Orphans is a great show, and I'm in the middle of it, and I love it.
I've
Uh,
seen Thunderbolt.
Gurren,
It's really good.
Gurren Lagann. How did I forget? You want to talk about mech shows? Gurren Lagann is probably a top 3 mech show ever. I mean, and
Yep.
this is if you're putting Neon Genesis Evangelion in that top 3, and
Personally, I view it as
want to.
going up and down. I think we've just come out of a dip. I think there was a bit of a spike around 2011, about around Gurren Lagann, about Death Note, about all that stuff. You know, about when I was in high
And
school.
Brotherhood was 2009, and it was going into 2011, I think. So
Oh yes,
Brotherhood was right around then.
but I'm of the firm opinion that we are going again into a great age. Just by seeing what's coming out, like next season, the season after the one coming up, we have things like Doctor Stone and what was the other one I saw? Doctor Stone's amazing if you haven't been following it. Um, I can't find it. I shouldn't have started
No.
talking, but basically, it's
Oh,
improving.
the other great shonen, and this is the one that this has become my pet project to push the Magi shows. Uh,
Yep.
Labyrinth of Magic and Kingdom of Magic has become my pet project because I am of the firm opinion that the first 2 arcs of the show were extremely typical shonen with absolutely nothing to distinguish them. And then it completely redid itself and turned into like the sprawling political epic that I thought was absolutely incredible and is one of my all-time favorite shows. If you could hear in the background, that's the Yu Yu Hakusho theme because my brother just turned it on. I don't know if you could hear it or not.
Because I think that in the '90s there was a spike, just like there was a spike in the '80s. But
Yeah,
spikes don't
yeah, I would say
last
so.
forever. And so, like, if you just don't like the things that have come in during the spike or the current spike, sorry,
It is
friend.
certainly true that we don't make anime like in the 90s, but I don't think that necessarily means it's worse. I think it's an example of time marching on.
I'm
Like
just hoping.
we're never going to have a show like the big 3 space westerns ever again unless it's a throwback show specifically.
Yep.
Like kind of like Gurren Lagann. Like Gurren Lagann was a throwback show specifically. Unless they make a show that's a specific throwback, we're never going to see a show like the big 3 space westerns ever again. And that's a shame. But on the flip side, I don't think that in that era we ever would have seen like a Mob Psycho 100 or a
Or
One
even,
Punch Man.
or
I
even a
don't
girl in
think
the
that
gone.
those sorts of stories weren't really those kind of semi-comedic shonen stories that were reconstructions, the decon recon type things. One Punch Man is a great example of the decon recon of a deconstruction reconstruction story where it
Mm-hmm.
questions the basis behind the concepts of both the shonen genre and the superhero story and really rips into and criticizes them before ultimately reaffirming them. And I don't think that you would have gotten that sort of story back in the 90s, possibly even just because you wouldn't have needed it. However,
Yep.
I'm certainly glad it exists.
You're absolutely.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's the era has changed. There's no question about that. However, I don't think it's necessarily worse. Even romance stuff now. Kaguya-sama is again, it's a very different type of tongue-in-cheek romance, but I think what makes these new anime stand out as so particularly good compared to maybe the previous lull era that you were referring to is that Kaguya-sama, for all of its comedy and parody in its DNA, is also a legitimately good show. Like you actually like the characters and you get legit
Mm-hmm.
invested in them, and it doesn't mock you for doing that. It's okay to get invested in the characters of Kaguya-sama. Like
Yep.
if you're invested in it, it's not going to make fun of you for that. It's going to make fun of the genre. It's going to make jokes, but it's not going to say, "Hey, you're wrong for wanting these two to get together." Similar with Mob Psycho. Mob Psycho is going to make fun of shonen, but it's also not going to tell you, hey, you're wrong for liking shonen.
Yep,
And I
and these
think
things go in.
that's what makes the shows different.
And these things go in cycles. Like the 1990s, 80s had all kinds of crazy fantasy movies like Willow and Labyrinth. But then we don't really see very many good fantasy movies this generation. Mech anime will come back again, and it'll probably be. I wouldn't be surprised if it's connected to either a decline or a
Well,
revival in Japanese spirit.
we do have Mamoru Hosoda for fantasy with The Boy and the Beast and The Wolf Children, which are both fantastic films.
Oh, I'm sorry, I meant Western, not
Oh,
necessarily
okay. I got
worldwide.
you. Yeah,
Um,
I get what you're saying.
like I'm just trying to think of it. It's like I don't think there's been a fantasy movie I've really been wanting to see Western wise for quite some time.
No,
And
I
things like
mean,
Robin
I
Hood
think
fell
that
on their faces so hard.
Peter Jackson gets too much of a rap among our crowd for the Lord of the Rings films. I think
Hmm.
that even taken on their own merits, they are legitimately great movies that get much more correct about the Tolkien universe than incorrect,
Yeah.
and that even the changes are good drama from a movie making perspective. And I think that a lot of it is people who really don't. I agree with a lot of the criticisms. I don't like what they did to Faramir, and I don't like what they did to Denethor in the films.
Hmm.
And I'm a little bit disappointed what they did with Frodo's character arc in it. However, I think that they are legitimately excellent films, and they should be acknowledged that way.
Now, the Hobbit films were the ones that had the issues.
The Hobbit films were absolute garbage, but that's another story.
The first one was kind of like Desolation of Smog. Third one was garbage. Yes.
Yeah. The Hobbits are separate.
See, he
Uh,
flubbed. Wooly Ram says he flubbed Aragorn, and I'm going to defend the portrayal of Aragorn, which is a very, very unpopular move. I know,
oh, I agree
and
with you though.
I understand why. It's a very unpopular move to defend Jackson's portrayal of Aragorn, but there is absolutely no question it is not the same character as in the books. It is a different character. It is not what Tolkien intended to portray. However, as a lead in a modern movie and somebody that we were going to be focusing on for a significant amount of time, and without digging into the complex backstories of all of these characters, to give him a concrete, visible conflict in himself that the user can latch onto, and also emphasizing not the heir of, what was it, Elendil? He was the heir of, but emphasizing that he's the heir of Isildur, who was a much more flawed figure. I think that it made a lot of sense the way that they portrayed Aragorn. I don't think you have that excuse with Faramir. And
I admittedly, I am not as much of a Tolkien scholar as I probably should be in these circles. I absolutely will defend Aragorn because Hugh Jackman, no, not Hugh Jackman. What was his name?
Viggo Mortensen.
Viggo Mortensen is an absolutely amazing actor in everything I've ever seen him play. I view him as probably the most underrated actor in all of Hollywood. Uh, and he's been in AAA, but they don't use him for anything. Like the movie that he was in after Lord of the Rings, Hidalgo, was amazing, but didn't make money. Then he did A History of Violence, didn't make money, so on and so forth. He just doesn't have draw power. He's ugly, but he's such a good actor. Anyway, I am. I need to break off from this. I think I don't really know why people complain about Frodo. I've never heard that one before.
Oh,
Uh,
I get it, and I actually think the criticisms of Frodo are correct. The reason that people criticize Frodo is that Frodo in the books has a character arc, and Frodo in the movies does not. Frodo in the
oh,
book starts off as fairly cheerful, optimistic hobbit with a love of adventure, a little bit like Bilbo, but less pompous and less full of himself.
mm-hmm.
Uh, However, as the story goes on in the Lord of the Rings book, Bilbo gets more and more wearied and broken by the ring, and he gets less and less idealistic about it, and he relies very heavily on Sam to keep from breaking entirely. and
Mm-hmm.
which is why Tolkien has referred to Sam as the real hero of the Lord of the Rings. Although people latch onto that, and I think are unfair to Frodo, who did have, as much as I love Sam too, he did have the much harder job,
Yes.
Frodo. Which I don't think enough people acknowledge that they both went on the journey, but Frodo absolutely had the harder job, but whatever. Anyway, going back to that in the books, in the movies, Frodo starts off as this really reluctant little, wisp of a hobbit, like that Elijah Wood played him as. And there isn't a real character arc. He's a fearful little, rabbit the entire time. I mean, I wouldn't even call Frodo fearful in the books, to be honest. He's afraid of Boromir at one point because Boromir is friggin' looks like he's about to assault him.
Yep.
However, he actually stands up to the Nazgul, which is something that he doesn't do in the movies, which in the books and in the movies is established as something that it takes an unbelievable amount of willpower to do, to stand up directly to the Nazgul. And when they come for him at one point on Weathertop, before Aragorn gets there, in the movie, he just kind of hides. In the book, he actually looks at them and says, "Get away from me. You're not welcome here," or something along those lines. And that scene was taken out of the movie because they got rid of Frodo's character arc. They made him a much weaker character from the beginning. Presumably, this was to increase the drama of giving a loser like this the ring.
Yeah.
However, with that the case, in the movie, they really should have just given the ring to Sam then, shouldn't they? In the book, it made a lot more sense because Sam was the servant and Frodo was the master, and Frodo was the guy who had to take responsibility for it. But in the movie, it doesn't really seem like he's the sort of person who would do that or the sort of person you would want to trust with it, rather than Sam, who loved elves and was always really into adventures. Frodo was into adventures in the original book. He was an elf friend.
I don't know enough to really say either way or have an opinion on it. And it would probably be wrong. I felt it worked out well on both counts in the movie and the book. I have no problems with Viggo Mortensen. I can see that Frodo doesn't have as much of a character arc, but I really don't see the whole giving the ring to Sam logic, but I don't want to talk about it either. Because it's like, as weird as it sounds, like I view the Lord of the Rings as
I'll say this. I think in comparison to movie Frodo, I would say, I don't know why you would give. I mean, I guess Frodo volunteered, but on the flip side, he doesn't seem like the sort of character in the movie who would volunteer, and it's not really clear why he did. But at least I don't think it's as clear. The movies do a very good job of just kind of covering this up. So I'm not going. Like I said, I actually think they're great films and should be more acknowledged by our side as that. They have great music, great visuals, great acting. I also really don't like their portrayal of Gimli that much, but they get Legolas very well. They get Boromir perfectly. They get Sam perfectly. They get Gollum, Gandalf.
Movie and book Gimli is.
Yeah, Gimli. See, the thing is, though, Gimli doesn't have that much of a character in the books, which is blasphemy to say, I know, but he really doesn't.
No, that's fine.
And neither does Legolas. Neither does Legolas, to be honest. They don't have that much character in the books. Their one defining trait is their friendship. But I think they make Gimli a little bit too cartoonish in the movie. That's my one criticism of him. He's a much more serious character in the books than the comic relief type of guy they make him in the movie.
I was fine with what he was. Like, it was, again, like, I view them as two separate ones.
He wasn't offensive. However, I will say I preferred the book version of him. They were definitely not quite the same character, and I think the book version was a little better. However, he wasn't an offensively bad figure.
Well, I am going to call it a night. I've got to go to bed in about an hour or two so that I can wake up at 3 a.m. To clean a gym. Which is I actually really enjoy the work. It's physical labor, but it's in air conditioning, and it's honestly not that bad. Turns out when you have a work ethic and decent managers, they'll just let you do what you want as long as it suits their goals. So I've got some nice new headphones. I'm going to get some podcasts or some book on tape, and I'm just going to start cleaning things. Anyway, Anthony, as always, it's a pleasure to have you on. I'm glad you could join me in the end. And I hope to everyone listening that you have a good rest of your night and that you look into my Fiverr thing and my Reading Rainbow Emperor YouTube channel where I review mostly Galaxy Edge books, but I'm running out of those soon, so there'll be some much-needed variety. Have a good night,
I'm looking forward to your Shield Hero thing. I really want to see that.
It'll be up week after next. Anyway.
And as soon as I can, I'll get my Trigun video. I have that written. I even had it recorded, but I really didn't like how I sounded, so I need to figure out something with that.
Hey, that's all right. Do what you need to do. And when you get it, I'll throw it up there. All right. Have a good night, guys.